Well, great. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth Liv.Aligned series in a series of 5 classes being held this fall. My name is Tracy Livingston Howard, and I am the co-founder of Liv.Lit, a coaching and training company. And my entire vision and mission rests around coaching high-growth entrepreneurs and CEOs to be a high-growth version of themselves, that we are the most important person in our businesses, and our vision, our intentions, our actions, and how we feel are creating all of the results that we're looking to have in our business and life. I am very excited for today's class, and I will be introducing Glenn Miller, our guest speaker, in a moment, because we're going to be talking about his 2008 recession story, his experience related to his business and life during that really challenging time in history that all of us have lived through. And I wanted Glenn to come on because of the parallels that I'm seeing in my coaching clients and just in the world in general, that 2022, we are also entering a recessionary period. We're entering times of inflation, times of uncertainty, financial challenges, and not just the world economy is really at a very challenging place, but we as humans are. The way we're working, the way we've been working in our companies and in our businesses is radically changing. People are burning out more than ever still, even working from home, even when people have this perception of flexibility to be able to take care of their health, to take care of their family. I am hearing over and over that people are still continuing to overwork, feel overwhelmed, anxious, and also you add a financial and economic crisis to it, are really in a challenging place. As you all know, as a coach, my job is to not ignore realities. It's to understand a bit more about the historic times we're living in, to understand what's happening in this external environment, and then what can we do with it? Like what can we do as leaders? Because we're of no help to people when we burn out. And I know people know this intellectually, but how do you actually bring that into practice? Or maybe if you're feeling great, you're not burning out, you're in a really great place, how can you support yourself to move your company to new heights in a way that feels good for you and others? So I actually just want to dive right in because Glenn is going to give us such a wealth of information that I want to give him the mic as much as possible. But before we do that, thank you to Rita and Isabel for joining us. Great to see you here. I'd love for you all, as you know, if you've been on a class before, please put your feet on the floor. Put both feet on the floor. And I'd love for you to take a moment to get in the room. We are all leading busy lives. We have lots going on in our business and personal lives. I'd love for you to just take a moment and push all of those things going on in your life out the room. Make an intention to be present here in this place, that you're going to get what you need, why you're here, what you've come for. So I'd love for you to take a moment and think about your intention for today. What do you want to get from this class? What's your intention for being here? How come you said yes to joining the call today? I'd love for you to take a moment to tune into your intention for why you're here. Write it down on a piece of paper. And when you have your intention, please put it in the chat so we can see what you would like to get from the call. What do you want to leave with at the end of this class? What's your intention? Kiri, tools to stay steady in times of crisis. So your intention is to get some tools from Glenn. Excellent. You will. Isabel, hi. Learn how to do it all and not get burned or burned out. Okay. Good intention. Glenn will share some nuggets of wisdom on that. All of my coaching revolves around being intentional. How come we're making the choices we're making? Why do we show up in certain rooms, and what do we want to get out of? We're really responsible for getting our intentions met. So I love when you all share what you want. Glenn and I could help you get your needs met, and we could support that. Johan, you said how to better manage self and business in uncertain times. So maybe an idea, maybe just a small little hit of awareness that could help you do that better or point you in a different direction. Perfect. So wonderful. So we're going to get started. I'd love to introduce Glenn, and we're going to go into a few questions. As you all know, you might know the format. We're going to do a little bit of a podcast style Q&A, where Glenn is going to answer a bunch of questions for me. And we are looking to have 10 minutes of Q&A with Glenn at the end. So if you have a question, if you want to know something, if you have a thought, please write it down while we're talking. That way, we're going to open it up to all of you to come on and talk to us. So today I have the immense pleasure and honor to introduce Glenn Miller, a serial entrepreneur and principal of MBG Finance. From pro football player to bank executive to serial entrepreneur, Glenn is currently a shareholder in 10 different businesses and operates his financial holding. Part of this transformation success comes out of the 2008 financial crisis. And it was to redesign his life with a strategic life plan and incorporate music as his symbol of balance. Today, Glenn is playing music, as he calls, semi-professionally, and is a proud father of 3 children with his wife, Lizabelle. So Glenn, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Tracy. I'm very honored to be here. And like you said, I'm happy to pass on some of my wisdom. Everybody can acquire knowledge, but wisdom comes at a price. And I'm happy to share my experiences going back to maybe the last large financial crisis back in 2008. As a matter of fact, they call it the Great Recession and compared it to the Great Depression back in the 30s. That time period, as many of you can recall, started in 2007. I came to the realization only in 2008 that we were in a pretty difficult economic crisis. And at the time, just to put in context a little bit what I was doing, I was part owner of 10 different companies, from financing to manufacturing to restructuring. I had purchased and started some of these businesses and acquired. That's a long story in itself, but basically, at the moment that 2007, 2008 hit, I had about $30 million of financial commitment to predominantly 3 banks. The biggest one being in Chicago, and all my companies actually were performing quite well. Even though some of them I bought in a distressed fashion and restructured them and was rebuilding the equity in those businesses. I woke up one morning with a phone call from my bank in Chicago that my bank was going out of business. So I had to fly to New York and go to see my lawyers and really try to understand the dynamics of what that meant. We all learn in school, in business school, what leveraging means. Everybody uses leverage to a certain extent, whether it's a mortgage or borrowing for your company and having a line of credit. They don't teach you the word deleveraging in university. And I teach this, when I give conferences at McGill MBA program, I have some very bright people in the room, and I have very few people that could actually explain to me what the effects are of deleveraging, right? So we heard the term in 2008, but I can tell you that the word deleveraging, the vision I have in my mind is a little bit that game we all played when we were young, where you put about 50 dominoes and you take that first domino and you let it go and you see it looks kind of pretty, but in the financial markets, it has tremendous impact, and it actually it goes outward and it impacts everybody. So that visual, if you can allow me that analogy, is an interesting one, because I for the next 2 years learned that word very, very well and understood what now that means. So what was my
Glenn,
reality?
tell us in 2008, this is kind of the beginning of the before. So you were about 40 years old. Is that right? You're about 40 years old. You,
I was actually, I was 45 years old. I hate to admit it, but I was 45 years old at the
okay,
time. But
45 and you've got these 10 companies and all of this go on your shoulders. And what was, what was your work ethic like? What were you like before the 2008 recession to lead up to this?
Well, that's a great question. So basically, when I was 39, I mean, you have your peak times as an entrepreneur. You know, your energy level's up, you're fearless. It doesn't matter what you're navigating through, high tide, waves, storms. You put your head down and you go. So, as you said in my intro, as a football player, as a pro football player, basically you're trained to forget about pain, forget about fear, forget about risk of injury. So actually, my training set me all up for not actually listening to all the signs. So at 39, I was full steam ahead, buying companies, restructuring companies, financing companies. In the peak of 2007, I had 300 employees. I had 5 different partners, and we had an EBITDA of about $5 million a year, just to put it in perspective. We weren't large. We weren't a large company by any sense. I mean, my biggest company was an aerospace company with 120 employees. We're a manufacturing aerospace part. But going back to that, the sense of, pressure I had when I saw the things, the wave, the tsunami that was in front of me, and kind of hit me from the side. I never saw it coming because my companies were all performing. So this is one of the messages I want to put out there. Many of you have, small, medium, perhaps large businesses that you're either working for, own, partly own. But when you get in these times, a lot of surprises can happen, and we can talk about the pandemic, and that was a big one. So we're coming out of a major 2-year adjustment period. But going back to that, I had an overwhelming sense of responsibilities because in my head I had 300 employees, but I was really feeding maybe in my head I had 1,000 people I was supporting with the children of my employees. So that sense of burden, or that sense of responsibility, was overwhelming. So what
So with
happened?
that overwhelm, I'm going to pause you. So with
Yeah.
that overwhelm, you've got this whole scenario set up. You've got still this pro footballer mindset of ignore the pain, ignore the signals, just go for it. What happened that got you, like we know where the story is going, what got you to hit that bottom and end up in the
Well,
hospital, Glenn?
that bottom, well, it came when the realization that I was going to have to, and a lot of people fear this, when you hit a certain level of success, and and if you don't come from money, and most of us don't, and you took a lifetime to build yourself to where you're at as an entrepreneur, the sense of fear of losing that over something that you feel you did not create is very difficult to accept. So when my bank in Chicago could call their lines of credits of 25 million, and you got literally months to come up with that kind of money, and it's impossible. Well, the reality is you're scrambling, you're not sleeping at night, you're not home, you're working 100 hours a week, and you're trying to figure out how am I going to manage this in a tailspin, and a tsunami where now you're trying to survive. So the big irony here is I made my money restructuring companies, and overnight I've become my own client. I can laugh about it today, but back then I can tell you it was not laughing. So the reality hit me when at 3 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't breathe. I went into a what they call an arrhythmic attack. My heart rate was 180 pulse a minute, and it stayed there for 3 hours. And I remember my wife sitting next to me. I was panting like a dog and sweating like a dog. So I ended up in the hospital. Firemen, they thought I was having a heart attack. So it took 2 of these episodes to get me diagnosed that I was physically exhausted from this situation that I was in. But if I go back to when I was 39 and I built this really nice portfolio of companies, I look at, 6, 7 years of really a major grind to get me to where I was, and all of a sudden, bam, I get sucker punched from the side, and all of a sudden I'm down, and I gotta find, clarity, energy, and just survival to try to, recompose myself and attack what's ahead of me. So
So when you were there, yeah, I know that it took 2 years. This was a 2-year process of when you got sidelined and you had your heart rate at 180. And I can only imagine how your wife was feeling, how everyone was watching Glenn, who's the center of a lot of holding this all together, that you're now out. So talk about what happened. What was your thought process over those few years, recognizing maybe I need to change, or what did you start to do from that point?
Well, on my doctor's recommendation, they wanted me to take several months off work, and being at the time a workaholic, I can call myself that. It was very hard for me to take a step back, but I needed to take a month off. I'd never done that. I basically couldn't even go up the stairs anymore, so I had to stay home. My wife was a big support for me, and basically I had to regroup, just get my basic energy back, functional, right? Just to eat properly, try to sleep, go through a night, and try not to have another episode of an arrhythmic attack. So arrhythmia attack rather. But in any event, that month off gave me at least enough energy. I had a slow progressive back to work. I sat down with my partner at the time and said, look, we're going to have to divest out of companies. We're going to have to sell some assets. We're going to have to sell some companies. We're probably going to have to sue our bank. There was a lot of moving parts here, and none of this they teach you at MBA school, right? So in any event, you're really thrown in the fire, and you really have to be creative, and you have to keep your focus. So unless you have your health and your wits and your mind, and you calm yourself down, you can't navigate through a crisis. People know if you panic in the water, you're going to drown. So
Yeah.
I had to get my health back. I had to get my focus back. And then at that point, what I needed to do was to have a stabilizing plan, because when you're in a crisis, before you start making all these big changes, right? It's a little bit like a patient in ER. You have to stabilize the patient before you can actually help the patient assess what's wrong with them. So basically, we put a short-term plan to pay down, $15 million a loan. We had to liquidate over 2 years, I put a strategy to liquidate our loan portfolio because we don't want to, sell it at a distressed price. And when I ended up actually, saving our emergent capital lending businesses, I was able to persuade my investors to go renegotiate with my bank in Chicago, and we bought our debt back at 50 cents on a dollar. We were in a very good legal position. Without getting into too much details, I want to keep this discussion at a high level. But anyways, that was sort of a lifesaver at the time, and that allowed us to really give us the time to restructure, divest out of certain companies, and more importantly, it allowed me to prepare my divorce with my partner, because at the time, we had different visions of what to do with the companies. He was a liquidator by trade, one of the best in Canada, and basically he had all the reflexes to stay in for the grind, saw a lot of opportunities and then wind down. I'm a builder of companies, I restructure companies, so we had completely different visions. So we had to kind of map out, how are we going to do this? Are we going to get divorced amicably? How are we going to transition out of all these businesses? It wasn't easy. So all of that to say that, I did put a stabilizing plan in place, and that ended up
For the business part
yeah,
of your life.
yeah,
So for the
correct.
business part of your life, you were
Yeah,
making choices
yeah.
to really, what I know is to untangle yourself from many of these businesses, commitments, relationships. But what was your intention? How come you were doing that?
Well, you really have to. I want to go back to your question, but it's a pretty big decision that I had to make, because seeing myself, very close to death, or at least my perception was I came very close to dying, losing my family. Seeing my kids get in an ambulance and crying was a life-altering moment for me. But as an entrepreneur, I had to walk away from some pretty serious equity in my businesses, right? So we were on the verge of selling one of my business for 8 million. I had about 5 million of personal money in this in equity, and I really had to make a choice in terms of where was my life going? Did I prefer keeping all this and staying where I was at? I couldn't do it. I had to realign what was making me happy, where was I in my life, and where I wanted to go in the future. And clearly, I needed to walk away and do it in a way that honorably. I did not want to go bankrupt. I didn't want to get sued. I didn't want to keep having, my health was not good at the time. And my marriage had taken a back seat because for 6 years I was focused on growing my businesses. So I had a lot at stake, and I had some pretty important choices to make. And I decided to choose my family, my health as a priority, and redesign my life from that point. And
This is a perfect point to go into the slide. Can you keep talking, but we can go into part of the work that Glenn does with people in these exact situations, and some of your mentoring work and business strategies to talk to guys and gals that are exactly where you are. And this is a beautiful visual for all of you to see of what Glenn has created in order for people and you all as well to start to look at your life in terms of what matters. So you all can follow along as Glenn talks about this as well. So you can do it for yourself, but I'll turn it to Glenn, and Glenn, tell me if you need me to click.
Yeah,
Okay?
well, on why did I do this in terms of transitioning out of my business and how I decided to deal with the financial crisis of 2008. At the end of the day, when walking away from money and companies and equities, you can always rebuild. You can always rebuild companies. People think they can't do it, but I've done it. So basically, one of the things I could not face was losing my true sense of who I was and the balance I had in my life. So when I came to recalibrating my life, I needed to develop a tool because I'm sure a lot of people on this seminar are hard workers. I know Retta, he's a client of mine, and we did this grid together. It was pretty revealing to him. He does 80, 90-hour weeks. So I had to do this with myself in order to reassess really what made me happy, where was I going with my life, how much time I wanted to spend in my business, with my family, my kids, my personal development. And actually, the only way to measure that, the only tool that we actually have is time. So seeing that we're all time obsessed and people are all, everybody's agenda is compressed now with social media and how fast information moves, I developed this life logistic weekly grind to even evaluate my own time, and that is my measuring stick to make sure that I stay balanced and I spend the appropriate amount of time in each of those quadrants, which are very basic stuff. This is I didn't reinvent anything magical here, but it's amazing how people stray away from basics, and especially in a time of crisis, you'll notice people really stray away from the fundamentals of what actually can save their businesses, their livelihood, and even their lives. So, this is something I would highly recommend, and this will be one of my takeaways for sure. So I don't want to spend too much time on it. I think people get it. It's a simple concept, but once you go through the exercise yourself, it's a pretty powerful one.
And Glenn, what comes up with a lot of clients of mine is they're working so much, so their piece of the pie of work is huge. It often overtakes all other areas, including sleep. It overtakes parenting, how much time they spend with their partner and their kids. It's so vivid how consuming it is. But the thing is that many people have the fear that if I work less, I will be less successful, or I can't hold up my business success. So what would you say to that individual who might be on that verge of burnout, but has this very real belief that if they slow down in the number of hours that actually they're not going to be the CEO they need to be, or that leader that they need to be to move forward?
So that reflects, that's a great question, Tracy, and it's a great observation, and it's one that I see on a regular basis with my clients. Um, I've restructured over 30 companies, North America, Europe. So I have a lot of experience with entrepreneurs who get themselves, and the immediate reaction is to double down, right? It's a little bit like you're on a road trip, you're behind in time, you stop too many times. What do? You speed up. You're 100, you're going 90 miles an hour so you can hit your timelines, right? So I would
You
tell
don't
you
sleep
that.
at night, you just keep driving.
Correct. You
Yeah.
just keep going. So I would say it's not about working more, it's about working smarter. And how do you work smarter? It's about identifying what some of your weaknesses are, right? So when I go in a company and I see a CEO or a family business and it's been going hard for whatever 15, 20 years and there's never really been a significant downturn in that business. Well, I always admire people say, hey, you know what? They take a step back, say, we've never been through this before. Our bank is, putting a lot of pressure on us. We have to borrow more money. We have to make some important decisions. We just lost our biggest client. We got supply chain problems in overseas. So I would strongly advise that you need to take a step back. You don't need to work more. You need to work smart, and you need to identify in the times that you're in and where this economy is going, sort of at a macroeconomic level, what are some of the mitigating risks you need to take on, and you need to go get the expertise. I often tell entrepreneurs, you isolate. The big challenge, and I'll use Red as an example because he's on this call and he's a client of mine, is you isolate yourself. Entrepreneurs have a tendency to really isolate themselves. So they get their business up to $1 million, $2 million, $4 million, $5 million, 30 employees, 50 employees. Some of you have many more employees, but they don't have a board of director. They have a controller. They really isolate themselves in moments of crisis because that's what got them there. Say, hey, I've made my own decision. I'm successful. But you know what? If you don't have the reflexes to work your way out of a serious recession or financial crisis, or a major something that should hit your business that you never saw coming. We'll use the pandemic as an example, right? You had a gym, most of the gyms are out of business. You were selling gym equipment, you end up doing really well. You had a restaurant, a lot of restaurants went out of business. You figure out how to do takeout meals, you were able to keep your margins, right? So we saw so many
So
examples of
there's creativity in it that we can
absolutely.
get in a time of crisis. Again, we know our executive functioning in our frontal lobe in our brain turns right off if we're in fight, flight, freeze. If there's any overwhelming stress, our brain literally turns off and it goes to more primal parts of the brain, which is also things we always used to do. We can
Correct.
go very much into what we used to do. Whereas what I'm hearing from you and the work I do around like flow and peak performance is that that's a very different altered state of mind to get into that's outside of stress. And the best people are getting support and guides and coaches and mentors and help so that they're not doing those extra 20 hours, that they're outsourcing this expertise of
Correct.
time to
So
people.
correct.
So
that
I want to
message,
keep us on time. I want to keep us on time. So if there's something else you want to say, Glenn, and then before we open up to Q&A, I want to talk about your advice on having gone through the recession and gone through this journey, which we could talk about for hours. Would you have done anything differently?
absolutely. I would have done, you need to learn from these times because there will be other times, right? Hopefully you have a long life, your business has a long life, and now we're facing, what people are predicting will be just as hard as 2007 to 2009 recession. Will it be a global recession? Who knows? There's a lot of instability in the world with wars. There's other serious problems, but we see what we want in the news, but definitely I had a period where, I had a bank in Alabama that was willing to put 100 million behind me. I could have had a very robust capital structure. We don't want to dilute ourselves. And my partner and I didn't take the deal because we're going to end up being minority owners of our business. But, I did not take that deal. Looking back, that deal would have changed the course of my companies. We would have been in a buying position of portfolios and companies as opposed to restructuring your own company. So, you know, I'd like to peel it back a little bit because you said something, Tracy, that's very, very important. So, yeah, in these times, you know, if you don't have the expertise, you definitely need to reach out to people who have been through this, older people, even retired people, whether they're mentors, teachers. If you have an uncle or a father or somebody, an aunt that was an entrepreneur. So, you know, there's a lot of wisdom out there. You just got to be smart enough to take the time to go look and find that. But when I tell people, you got to peel it back a layer further. And one of the things that I would have done is that I had set myself some pretty ambitious goals when I was young, right? I wanted to be whatever, a successful businessman. I wanted to have X number of millions, how many company. So you set all these goals, you put your head down and you grind. And basically, we all have our own standard of living, right? You end up with one house, you have a country home, you have a ski condo, you know, so you create the standard of living for yourself, and you're not prepared to let that go because that's a lot of fun. But you know, you realize that perhaps that is also what drives your business, because you got to maintain what I call a high standard of living. And then if you peel it back even further, you got to really assess, is that really what's making you, you know, happy in life? And ultimately, is this really what you want out of life? And is that really what's making you happy? And what I tell some of my clients is that you become you know, your business is, you've created a business around your lifestyle, right? So you're actually not living your life. You're living in your business to support your high standard of living. And a lot of people get caught in that paradigm and they can't seem to get out of it. So today,
And it's an
ironic,
old paradigm that's been passed down so long. And I just want to say, I really commend your wisdom that at the age of 45, you got it, that you didn't get back out there and then recreate this pattern over and over again, that you understood. Maybe let me ask myself an existential question. What actually does success look like? What if I got to the end of my life and I had a great time, I had a great trip, would I be doing this? Would I actually continue this way of working, which again is never in the present moment, it's always in the future, the past. And what about my kids and my wife and my health? It's like, whoa, you had that moment of clarity, I would say, like an awakening, really, where you got it. And knowing where you are now, beautifully successful, let's say all the externals, money, reputation, you know, knowledge and expertise, and you're a part-time musician, you're always hanging out with your family, you're smiling, you're in a completely different energy, and you're still alive. And that's the real thing, that you figured out how to be healthy and take care of Glenn, and then be able to have enough of that cup filled over to enjoy yourself. And I want to make sure we have time to open up for questions before we close. I'd love to hear, everyone, what came up for you? What would you want to know? Or what are you maybe struggling with, a challenge or a problem that you just want to see what Glenn has to say about it? I'd love to open up the lines. Go ahead, Isabel. Please unmute yourself.
Oh, I was going to write. I would love to thank you so much. This is very inspiring and encouraging, because I feel like everything I'm doing now, I'm trying to avoid to get to where you got. And a lot of times I feel like I'm not taking action because I want to be safe to not get there, right? And I would love to hear what you just said. Do not get caught up on the, like, I would like you, if you can elaborate more on that, and what can you recommend so people I can move but also not get where you got, right?
well, I would highly recommend that you develop a strategic life plan. You know, we go to universities, you know, that doesn't matter whether you have formal education or not. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, and if you're an entrepreneur, for me, you're chasing your dreams, and that's great. So it doesn't matter what level of education you got. So we do business plan, we do marketing plans, but very, very few people actually do strategic life plan. So what 2008 and 2009 forced me to do was to take a step back and do a strategic life plan for myself. And that propelled me to really take a deep dive in my life. And going back to what Tracy was saying, is what was making me happy. how do I define success? Clearly, at the level of success I had, I was drinking too much. I was never home. I burnt myself down to a burnout. I was in a burnout state, and for me, I would tell, my father didn't even believe in burnout. He comes from, poor family, and that generation, that they don't believe in burnout. So I was in complete denial. So actually, 2008, I probably saved my life. As close as I came to losing it, probably saved it, because I had to redesign, redirect, reinvent myself, and align myself with what truly was making me happy, which was my wife, my kids, my freedom, my health, and basically, I even took me on a spiritual journey. I used to play piano when I was a kid, played a lot of music. I'd stopped. I felt I lost my balance, and basically, I went back to music, and today I play every week, and I play everywhere. So I'm quite happy with, how that symbolically keeps my balance in my life. But ultimately, a strategic life plan is critical because it really realigns what you want out of life. And that plan it evolves, right? You don't do it once. You do it every couple of years. You got to follow it. You got to measure it. You got to sit down with your other significant other and make sure that your family, you got to put your personal values down, your mission statement down. What do you want to get out of life? Success means different things for different people. I always tell people it's not about money. If you're debt free in life and you have control of your time, and you have control of pursuing your dreams, that's a pretty big thing, right? And that's a hard thing to keep, right? Most people don't
And
make
it's
that
not a
leap.
narrative always that people have, right? So
Right.
I moved to Curacao with 5 suitcases. Like, we got rid of all of our belongings, all of our material, physical stuff, save for a few things. And we decided that in order living is location independent and having our kids and being able to pick up our kids, the first kids to leave daycare every day, we're the first parents to get our kids at daycare. We get them at like 3:15, and to be parents, live a lifestyle where we're in our freedom. We could do the work that we like, so we're our own boss. We would love to be, multimillionaires and blah blah, but we actually don't have the ambition to build multiple hundred staff as a company, and that's not our success. Our success looks different. And what I want to say as well is that our success should change over time. So what was successful for Glenn when you were a pro football player was different than when you were 39, how you define success. And then this one was like, bro, if you do not change your definition of success, you will collapse. So there's this, I want to share here that Eckhart Tolle, and I've done some classes, that he says that there are 3 ways that we can do something awake or take actions consciously. We can be in a state of acceptance, just accepting what is. Here we are, 2008 recession. You have to accept it, what is. He's like, then we need to move into a place of either enthusiasm, so doing things that make us enthusiastic. So Isabel and all of us, like, what makes you enthusiastic? What brings that energy to something that you do? What are you enthusiastic about? Or doing things that you enjoy. What brings enjoyment to your life? As Glenn says about music, he enjoys music, right? He might be enthusiastic about his wife's art and enthusiastic about getting her art all over the world. That brings such enthusiasm and creativity. So there is these 3 things I'd love for you all to look at after the class around, like, awaken doing, so that we can start to understand, how do I take action, but also do it in a way that's aligned. That's who I am and aligned to what I want. Is there one more question before we do a nice closing on the class? Is there anyone that has something they want to ask or share? Yes, Johan, please. Hi. Oh, unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for all the great insights. I took 3 pages of notes, Glenn. So one of the things I really love is simple yet quite complex to do is control your time rather than time will control you. Now that I'm a full-time entrepreneur, been gone from a 9-to-5 job and went through depression as well in that time, created my company. now I really enjoy, I really got that message that now I'm in control of my time, so to speak, more than time was controlling me. And when you do that, and then you added Tracy, what brings you more energy. I think Glenn is a high energy guy, but I saw him smiling a lot, and I think more is in his passion. So clearly went from a big workspace to an even bigger heart space, which led to more control, having him more control this time. Which control is in a good way, not pejorative way, but controlling in that sense is really brings you a lot of benefit, which I see more of this. I didn't know Glenn back in 2008, but I'm sure that the workspace was huge, and then the heart space became even bigger. So thanks for that insight.
Thank you, Johan. I agree with that from what I know as well. Glenn, is there something you'd like to share as we close? And then I'll just give you all a hint of the last class that we've got coming up in December. So how would you like to close?
Well, as a closing, people are talking about we're heading into recession. Well, I think we are in a recession. So I would tell you that, don't, like Tracy said, accept that we're going to be in difficult times, accept that you can acquire a lot of knowledge during this period, and that, it's only going to make you grow. Pain does hurt, but it does make you grow when you can deal with it, accept it. I would tell everybody that you really need to have your personal life in order, do your strategic life plan, and then you need to take a hard look at your business to mitigate the turbulent times that are ahead, right? So manage your debt. You really got to look at who's around you, because ultimately it's people that build companies, and you need good people around you. And I'm sure a lot of you are well surrounded, but there's always people that perform better in these times, and you need to identify them, and you need to have them by your side. I won't go in a course on how to survive a pandemic or an economic recession financially in your company. There's a lot of different things you can do. I'm happy to share that with you if you want to reach out to me. But I would tell you that there are interesting times ahead. So stay positive despite all the negativity you're going to hear and all the fear that you're going to hear. You can still thrive in these times, and that's it. And I'm grateful for the time to spend with you. Thank you, Tracy, and everybody for being here.
Glenn, thank you so much. And it's clear that having gone through that, you are thriving now. And it's really a symbol that people can get through a really dark night, a really dark time in their life. You're a living example that you've walked through that, and you're able to show people that you can be even more in success and thriving on your terms when you make those changes. So thank you so much for your time today. I am thrilled to let you all know that our last Liv.Aligned class in this series of 5 classes all around leading through crisis is with my spiritual director, Rose Bogos. Rose was a fan favorite from last year. I have known her since I was 19 years old, and she is going to share the big spiritual lessons of 2022 and give us a nice rundown of what the heck happened from a very symbolic spiritual lens. And she's going to do a reading and a forecast of what we can maybe expect to come in 2023. It's going to be fun, and she is going to be offering 5 participants a live one-to-one reading with her. And so you can submit your questions if you register, and we're just going to have a really great way to celebrate the end of the year and what's to come in the new year. So I hope to see you on that class. Thank you for your time and your presence and your energy on today's class. And I will talk to you soon. So thank y'all. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye, Tracy. Thank you.